It is starting up now. I'll let you know when it's done.
Okay. And sorry for all the noise here. You know, we are live here at the fairgrounds, even though we're not actually doing in-person hamcation. So you're actually hearing a prize drawing going on in the background right now. All right.
All right, you are live on YouTube.
The IC7610 is the SDR every ham wants.
ICOM.
All right, welcome to the SDR. Sorry, I forgot the whole name. The SDR. Yeah. Welcome to the SDR webinar. Your panelists for this webinar are Steve Brightman and Michael Ladd. Please use the Q&A function to post questions. They will be answered during the session, but if it's a longer question, we'll probably just push that to the end just to save some time during the presentation. After the webinar is closed, the presenters will provide an email address or some other way of contacting you if you do have questions after the webinar has closed. The webinar is also being live streamed on YouTube and is being recorded for later viewing. You can find information to access those videos on www.hamcation.com. Just so you know, your camera does not need to be on and your microphone has been muted. If there is a special need, you may raise your hand and we can turn on your microphone temporarily. Also be aware that there is a strict time limit for this webinar. We will have to stop the webinar at around 50 minutes after the hour in order to make time for the next webinar to start. So without further ado, take it away.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. First thing I'm going to do is to make things much more pleasant for you so you don't have to see me staring at you is I'm going to share my screen as well. And let's see, hopefully by now you can see my cover page. What I asked the moderator here to do, just to break the ice a little bit, is ask you guys a few questions up front. For example, the first one is, how many of you have attended Hamcation in person in the past? There you go. I see them on my screen. I hope you can see them. And if you did attend Hamcation in person, did you attend the talk from SDRplay? And then thirdly, just for my information, is do you own an SDR? And it feels kind of weird to be presenting to you today online. The last ham event I attended in person was last year's Hamcation. And it's always something I look forward to as being the start of the new season. And it's strange that this year, instead of enjoying the Florida weather, I'm sitting here in Texas where it's about 25 degrees and downright cold outside. So the numbers are coming in. There's a pretty good split. A third of you have been there before. Most of you have never had the pleasure of seeing me speak. And probably after today's webinar, you'll probably wish never to have to hear me speak again. I've given basically the same talk for several years now, and my goal is always just to explain to people that may not be aware of what an SDR is what you can do with it. I try and raise enthusiasm for using an SDR and the things you can do with them. I'm not primarily here to push SDRplay, although I will use our own products as an example. But my main goal is just to get you enthused about your SDR and get you out and using it. And I see about 3/4 of you already own one. So that's a good start. So again, my goal is not so much to explain how an SDR works, but what it enables a ham to do that maybe you couldn't do with a conventional rig. Now with me today is my colleague, Mike Ladd, who some of you may know, KD2KOG. He's actually located in Southern Florida, and he's feeling very shy. So He's going to keep his camera off, but he's going to be monitoring the chat window, and hopefully he will be able to answer any questions that come up. I believe I will also get notified if you raise your hand and want to ask a question. If possible, I will answer it on the spot. However, if it's a long question or requires a long explanation, I may ask you to wait until the end and see how we're doing time-wise. So without further ado, let's get into the presentation. If I can figure out how to control everything here. The other interesting thing is when I'm doing it in person, when I've got my, here we go. When I have my laptop hooked up to a projector, I get a little sneak preview of what the next slide's going to be and any notes to remind me of what I want to talk about. So what is an SDR, software-defined radio? It's basically a radio whereby you've broken it down into two parts, a hardware part, and the hardware is essentially becomes a black box. And all it does is it amplifies RF signals, it filters out unwanted signals, and then converts them into the digital domain. You may hear words like IQ data stream. And that's the sole function of the hardware. So once that has been converted into a digital fashion, it is then passed on to the software, and the software is where all the magic happens. And as you can see, oops, I'm not doing very well driving my own computer here. As you can see, you can do all sorts of things with the software. You can display, you can implement really cool filters. You can use software to decode digital transmissions, for example. You get a much better view of the spectrum. So there's lots of reasons why you might want to do this. And let's see, I'm wondering if I need to keep the questions up any longer. So a lot of newbies, and only 1 in 10 of you actually saw me before. That's pretty cool. So let's move on and talk about the hardware a little bit. Today's talk, I wanted to concentrate, rather than covering the whole thing, soup to nuts, the hardware, the software, and everything else. Because of the time constraints, I really wanted to concentrate on some of the software features, some of the cool stuff you can do in software, and some of the advances that have been made since my last attendance at Hamcation. So with that in mind, let's move ahead, and we can learn how to drive this.
I did have some questions already, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm not seeing them. That's the problem. Let me stop sharing, and maybe they'll pop up. Here we go.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I've already got a second monitor, a second laptop, even. Oh, it's even colder in Montreal. That's pretty cool. Are you coming out with a switch to work with transceiver and SDRplay? No, we are not, because MFJ already makes such a switch. Why doesn't the receiver cover the whole RF spectrum? It covers 1 kilohertz to 2 gigahertz, which is pretty much the whole spectrum in my book. It would be nice to increase the top end, and maybe that's something we can do in future products. Okay, someone says they can't hear me. I'm not sure what the issue is. Okay.
We did have some other questions in the Q&A box as well.
I'm answering them.
Okay. I'll leave that up to Mike.
Okay.
In terms of the spectrum, I see a later question here about 800 megahertz, and that only pertains to the scanning function. Scanning is verboten in that range. You can still tune to those frequencies, but the scan range is not there. So everybody else is hearing me good. I'm gonna actually answer some of these things that came up in chat as we go through the presentation. So I'm going to go back to the sharing mode and hopefully answer some of those questions in there. So hopefully you can see me again. I apologize if I'm blocking part of the screen. In terms of hardware, there is a lot of different options out there, from the cheap 8-bit dongles through a lot of mid-range performing products, and up to the really high-end specialized SDRs. And, if you've looked at flex radios and stuff, they're very high-end SDR-based transceivers. We like to think we're hitting a sweet spot right in the middle in terms of price and performance, where we offer significantly better performance than the dongles, and yet we can still keep the price range within most people's budget. So in terms of the SDRplay family specifically, we have 3 models in the range now, and this kind of answers one of the chat questions. The coverage is continuously from 1 kilohertz to 2 gigahertz. All of them have the ability to receive, monitor, and record up to 10 megahertz of spectrum bandwidth at a time. That means you can look at signals in multiple bands, certainly on HF, and you can use it either as a standalone general coverage receiver or combine it with your rig in a pan adapter type configuration. You'll have to excuse me, I got a bit of a cough going here. So the RSP1A is an economy unit. It's packaged in a plastic case, although it is shielded internally. There's an internal coding, single tuner, single input. Moving up to the RSP-DX, which is actually our newest product, it offers multiple inputs, so you can switch between different antennas, for example, still single tuner. And it has a new mode called HDR for enhanced performance below 2 megahertz. So if you're into LF or VLF, it's very good for that. And then at the top of our range is the RSP-Duo. And in addition to having multiple input capability, it has 2 individual tuners and enables you to do things like diversity tuning or tune to 2 different frequencies simultaneously that are well separated beyond that 10 megahertz window. Okay, so moving on. That's the hardware overview done. As from a software standpoint, I'm going to use SDRUno as the example. It's our own software. We bought the rights to this. It used to be called Studio One, and used to sell for about $150, I believe. And again, excuse the cough. Good job we're not meeting in person, I guess. Anyway, SDRUno is very full-featured, and it's been designed to really exploit the capabilities of the RSP family. And what you see on the screen here is SDRUno in a scanning mode. And it offers things like memory banks, which you see on the towards the left-hand side. And you can scan frequencies from those memory banks, or you can just do a completely open scan and specify your own frequency range. So it has lots of good capabilities. It has band framing buttons at the top, which are very useful because it will restrict the width of the visible spectrum to the band that you're interested in. It will also switch the mode to, for example, lower sideband or upper sideband as appropriate. And I find that very useful as I want to see what the activities like on the various bands. It has the ability to take power and signal to noise readings and save them to a file. You see a button there in the middle. I don't know if you see my mouse pointer here or not, but power and SNR to CSV is that function. So it has a lot of great features, and we've been just adding to them as time goes on. Another function of SDRUno, it's kind of a busy slide here. It has multiple what we call virtual receivers, up to 16 of them can be used. And those 16 receivers, they can be assigned or tuned to different frequencies as long as they fall within that maximum 10 megahertz bandwidth. So for example, you could have one VRX on 20 meter band, one on 30 meters, one on 40 meters. But another way to do it, even within the same band, where they're very useful, is you can take the output of a virtual receiver and send it through a virtual audio cable to some decoding software. And in this little example here, we've got one VRX being used to output an SSTV signal for decoding, and then 2 other VRXs are being used to send data out to WSJTX, which is a very popular add-on piece of software. In fact, I've got another example of that here. This is a slightly less busy screen because we only have one VRX. And what we see here is we're using WSJTX. And I apologize if you can't see the all the details on the screen. We do have more info on this on our website. And I think this is set to record one of the digital modes. I forget exactly what we were doing. But in addition, we're running a program called Grid Tracker, and that displays graphically on a map the various spots that you're picking up. So a very popular package there. And just one example of using SDRUno in conjunction with your RSP and some third-party decoding software. Another example is using Ham Radio Deluxe. I mentioned Ham Radio Deluxe because it's a very popular package. There are various elements to it. A lot of people like to use it for the logbook functionality. Excuse me once again. And HRD also does, it has a module called DM780, if you're familiar with it, that can be used for decoding digital modes also. Anyway, it can be seamlessly integrated with SDRUno and an RSP and indeed your rig, and they will all work together so that you can alter the frequency in HRD or alter the frequency in SDRUno or turn the tuning dial on your rig, and everything stays in sync. And it's a pretty cool feature. And one more software example I want to give you today is because I just love these pictures so much. Either using SDRUno in conjunction with a package like WX2IMG, or there are some dedicated softwares like I think one's called LPRT. You can actually pick up and decode weather satellite images from the GOES satellites, NOAA satellites, Meteor, and so on. And I think that's pretty good going, considering you don't need much more than an RSP-1A, which is a budget SDR receiver, and you don't even need a fancy antenna. Some people have been picking up pretty good satellite images on VHF, UHF using just a basic discode. So lots of cool things you can do. And what I really wanted to illustrate by way of these software examples is that what you're actually building in your shack when you do this is an SDR ecosystem. And at the heart of the ecosystem, you have your SDR software. In our case, we're talking SDRUno. And on the one hand, you can combine it with a rig, if you have a rig with CAT capability and an RSP. So at a minimum, what you can do is you can add band scope capabilities to a rig that may not have that capability to begin with. Even if your rig does have a band scope built in, and I'm thinking of the little advert we had at the beginning here for ICOM. ICOM does some excellent rigs with band scopes built in. If you combine it with an RSP and SDRUno, you can use the built-in band scope on one band that you may be working and use SDRUno to look at a different band. So you can look for signs of activity that are going on there. So for many people, that's all they want from their SDR ecosystem. But then if you combine that with third-party software, pretty much the sky's the limit, if you'll forgive the pun. There are all sorts of digital decoders out there for decoding voice signals, for example, DRM, radio broadcast stations. They can decode text messages. They can decode weather faxes. There's logging software you can use. There is software that will annotate the display to show you what frequencies are being used and who it is that's using those frequencies. So many things you can do to really expand the capabilities. So we've come a long way from just having a rig where you turn the dial and you just listen and maybe talk to some people at the other end. I'm dying here. So typically to interface to third-party software, you'll be using something called a virtual audio cable, which is a way of getting the received signal out of SDRUno and into the third-party decoding software. And if you want to synchronize the frequencies, for example, a lot of the third-party decoders allow you to specify a particular frequency you want to work on. You can communicate and synchronize that back to SDRUno using virtual COM ports. And then in turn, SDRUno will synchronize that back to your rig. So it's a really potent combination. And then finally, there are the various input devices. Obviously, you're running SDRUno on a computer, so you'll be used to using perhaps a mouse or a trackball and a keyboard. You can also use various other devices. I'm showing a contour shuttle here, which are really cool for being able to emulate the tuning function and put shortcuts on the buttons for various functions. So with that in mind, those are the capabilities that we've already seen. Let me show you what we're doing here at SDRplay to take this to the next level. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this for just a moment and have a quick look at the chat and see if there's any good stuff. DC to daylight, yeah. 1 kilohertz to 2 gigs is as close as we've got. That's really cool. And how are the rig and SDRUno integrated? That is done using a free piece of software called OmniRig. And it allows the rig and SDRUno to talk back and forth and exchange frequency information, which is really cool. I don't know if there's anything else I missed here that Mike didn't answer.
I have most of the stuff in the Q&A section of Zoom.
Okay.
I haven't been monitoring the live chat, but I'm just
okay. No,
catching up
that's fine, Mike. I'm going to leave that to you because it's very hard for me, even with all these screens I've got to do anything. Diversity tuning came up. This is tricky to answer quickly. Basically, and there are several different kinds of diversity tuning. In the context of the RSP Duo, what it involves doing is taking two separate tuners and typically feeding them with two antennas that are separated by some physical distance. Although you can also do it with two antennas, one vertically polarized and one horizontally polarized. And then you take those two signals synchronized and you can merge them together. And you can do that to either reinforce a particular station of interest and cancel out any background noise. And that there's an automatic capability in SDRUno to do that with the RSP DX. Excuse me, with the RSP Duo. That's the only device that's capable of doing this because it synchronizes the output from the two tuners across the USB port into your PC. And that's where SDRUno does the magic. So that's a very brief description of it. Again, I recommend you visit SDRplay.com. We have a very extensive video and applications catalog there that goes into this stuff in much more detail. Physics is ahead of me. Yeah, I love physics. I'm a physicist by training, as it happens. So that's pretty cool. Brief mention: which software runs on Apple Mac OS? Natively, your best bet is Cubic SDR. I use it here a lot because I'm basically a Mac household. I'm talking to you on a Mac Mini, and my crib computer on the side here is a MacBook. However, if you want to run SDRUno, which is a much more capable piece of software than Cubic SDR, it does run very nicely in either Fusion or Parallels as a virtual machine on the Mac. I'm trying to keep an eye on the time here to see how we're doing. Okay, so next I'm going to go back to the screen sharing. And let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the future. Or actually not happening in the future, it's actually starting to happen now. And late last year, I think it was, excuse me, we introduced in version 1.4 of SDRUno a new feature called plugins. And the plugins, you may have seen them used with other types of other software packages. In the context of Uno, we have the ability to both develop plugins internally at SDRplay.com and share it to the user base, or the community themselves is able to develop plugins. Everything we've set up is open source. And what we've done is we have basically given you the hooks to get into the SDRUno or to your RSP and add functionality to that. Some examples, and I'm going to show you a couple here in just a moment. DX Cluster was one of the first ones we did. We've done an audio recorder. We do one for generating a MUX output for RDS Spy. If you're in Europe, you might be more interested in the DAB plugin. It's not used hardly at all in North America. Frequency annotation is excellent. We'll show you that in a moment also. The plugin system can also be used to simplify interfacing to third-party software. I talked about virtual COM ports and virtual audio cables. And with the plugin system, you can kind of bypass the necessity to set that up and have a very simple interface to that third-party software. And then finally, you can also use that as a means to customize external hardware interfaces into the SDRUno itself. And I'm looking at the clock here and want to make sure we don't run out of time. So I've got a few demos here. And I don't know if you know what a DX cluster is. What we did was my colleague Mike prepared a little demo video. So I'm going to play that and hopefully you can hear it. And he will explain what a DX cluster is.
One of the plugins that we have provided at the launch of SDRUno version 1.4 is the DX cluster plugin. This plugin shows some of the sorts of annotations that can be added to the main SP display. For those of you that are not familiar with what a DX cluster is, it is a worldwide interconnected network of servers that allow licensed amateur radio operators a central hub to send and receive DX spots. A DX spot is a record of when a contact from one amateur radio operator to another is made. This is logged on a server so that every other amateur radio operator logged into one of the DX cluster networks can see when and where the DX spot was made. By displaying this information in real time on the SDRUno main SP display, you can easily see where successful contacts have been made recently on the band you're currently visualizing. I also want to inform you guys that the server will store DX spots across all bands, but we will only see the spots that are logged within the frequency limits of our main SP display. Now we can easily change bands while the DX cluster plugin is running and then see any spots that are within the new band. Earlier I said that the DX cluster system is used by licensed amateur radio operators. Indeed, you will need a valid call sign put into this plugin for it to work. If you're not a licensed amateur radio operator, I found a website, and I'll put a link in the description, that will enable you to obtain a call sign for shortwave listening, which you can use in this plugin. So all the shortwave listeners, you can get a valid call sign and input it into the plugin, and it will enable it to work.
Okay. I'd like to point out it may be a little hard for you to see the detail on the screen there. This was actually an extract from a longer video that's available at our website. If you go to our video catalog and type in plugin as a search term, you'll get a number of videos of the various plugins. But it's a really cool feature, especially for those of you that are into contesting. So the next one I wanted to bring up was the audio recorder. And a little bit of explanation is in order here. There is a built-in record function in SDRUno, but that built-in function is what we call a full spectrum recorder. It records the entire IQ data stream, so that when you play that recording back, you see the full spectrum that you have displayed on the screen when you made the recording. And what you can then do is you can tune across the spectrum to different stations as if you were doing it in real time. So that's really cool. But the audio recorder plugin is something different. It is designed simply to record the output from a particular station that you tune to within SDRUno. And again, Mike did a little demo for us, so I'm going to play that.
One of the plugins we have provided at the launch of SDRUno version 1.4 is the audio recorder plugin. The audio recorder plugin records the current tuned VFO for the selected VRX. The plugin will output the audio in either PCM wave or MP3 format. Let's have a look at some of the key features of the audio recorder plugin. Folder. Folder displays the selected folder that the audio recording will be saved to. File. When the recording is in progress, the file name will be displayed here. Size. During the recording, the output file size will continually be displayed here. VRX. Select the VRX to record the audio from. Duration. Displays the length of the current recording. Recording format. Selects between either PCM WAV or MP3 recording format. Select folder. Use this button to specify the location of the audio recording. Start recording. Use this button to stop and start the audio recording.
My 6500 for several years, and I, of course, had a completely different viewpoint about Flex than that. But I wasn't going to argue with him or anything, but I just let him use the multiplex, and he changed his whole perception after that. And now he's figured out how to use it, I think. Back to you, Gary, W5OG. Yeah, W5OG on the Flex radio net. This is W2C. Well, that's why, Dudley has been so valuable with, as far as the Flex radio support is concerned, because he actually took the time to talk to the people and make sure their computers.
Now he's closing the SDRUno down just to play back.
Yeah, the Flex radio net. This is W2C. Well, that's why, Dudley has been so valuable with, as far as the Flex radio support is concerned.
This concludes our short demonstration of the audio recording plugin.
Okay, so the first two were plugins that were developed by SDRplay. And one of the reasons behind the plugins was we have a well-defined roadmap for SDRUno. And what we want to do is we want to have networking capability. That's the most commonly requested feature, I guess. We also want to make it multi-platform so that Mac users can run SDRUno natively, Linux users as well, which is really cool. But at the same time, we get a constant stream of requests for different features. And we figured if it would be great if we could throw out a capability so that interested third parties could do this, either commercial software manufacturers or even hobbyists that know how to code. And one of the first that came out of this exercise is called Fran for frequency annotation. And I think it's still my favorite plugin so far. So I actually did a little demo here. And let me play that back for you, and you can see what the frequency annotator plugin does for you.
1080 KRLD, your news now. Can we do more to enforce the rules?
Fran, or frequency annotator, was one of the first plugins developed by the user community. In this example, I have a memory bank selected, which lists all the local AM broadcast stations. As you can see from the memory panel, I have previously put in the description field the call signs for each station. Now let's start up Fran. The plugin window may be open by default when you start SDRUno. Here it's in the upper right hand corner. However, if it is not open by default, it can be opened by clicking on the Plugins button in the main window. Now we're going to select Fran and load the program. Now we can select a file. And what we will do now is we will navigate to find where my memory banks are, which in my case is in a directory under Documents, SDRplay, and Memory Banks. But you can navigate to wherever you have included your memory banks. Now the type of file in a memory bank is an S1B, so rather than SW-SCEDS, we have to select bank. And now we see all my memory bank files, and we can select AM broadcast. And now you can see the annotations appear on the spectrum for the AM broadcast band. But Fran isn't limited to just memory banks that you've already created yourself. And one of its great strengths is the ability to load in external databases for much more general purpose SWL listening. So if we return to File Manager, we can now open it up, and this time we'll navigate towards the default Community Plugins folder, which by default when you install is under Documents Community Plugins, and there you see an SW-SCEDS file which we can now open up. Once we've done that, you see the annotations are very densely packed, and in fact you will probably want to zoom in to take full advantage of this. But let's go look at some of the other SWL broadcast bands. Now you see there's not quite so much density going on there, but again, you may want to zoom in for best results. Okay, so that's Fran. Like I say, still one of my favorites. You have the ability to import from the SW Sketch.
One of the plugins we have provided at the launch of SDRUno.
Excuse me. You have the ability to import SW Sketch files, EIBI database. So there are various sources you can bring in, and it's a very powerful plugin, and we're indebted to Eric Cottrell for doing that. And the next one I want to show you is going off in a slightly different direction. And this is one that was developed by Black Cat Systems. And as I mentioned previously, normally to interface between SDRUno and third-party software, you'll need to set up virtual COM ports and virtual audio cables. It's not that difficult. The capability's built in, but it would be nice if there was a simpler way to do it. And to that end, Black Cat has released a plugin to interface to their various software packages. They make a number of different very cool software packages. And I want to point out that the packages themselves, you have to pay for them. They do packages for both Mac and PC. The plugin is free, but if you like their software packages, we encourage you to purchase them and support Chris as he develops more and more cool software that we can use with our SDRs. So let's go back to Mike, and he can give us a quick look at the Black Cat plugin.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Mike, Katie.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Mike, KD2KOG, part of the technical support staff at SDRplay. Quick video, I want to show you guys a new plugin that was developed by Black Cat Systems. And this plugin interfaces with Black Cat Systems specific software. It interfaces with 3 independent packages. In the program, you're going to have to go into the preferences and select Use SDRUno plugin. So I'm going to go ahead and check that. And I'm going to select streaming. It's getting data. And now what I'm going to do is go into the schedule function and see what WeFax stations are transmitting right now, and see if I can do a quick decode. And as you can see, let's mute this here. As I'm clicking on stations, it's automatically tuning, and it's sending the audio over UDP into the decoder. And let's click start, and let's see if we get a slight image. I'll do this one quick, and then we'll head over to Slow Scan TV, and then I'll head over to the DX Toolbox. So this is working. You can see I'm decoding a weather fax right now. So let's go ahead and close this out. Now let's go into setup and select one of the Slow Scan TV frequencies, 14.230. And it tunes SDRUno perfectly fine. Oh, there we got one. Let's first go into Volmet. So I'll select Volmet. And just keep your eye on the VFO frequency here in the RX control. And if there are Volmet stations on right now that I wanted to try and pick up, I can double click it and it will tune. It will tune SDRUno to that frequency. The second area was TIS. So let's go head over to that. We'll just click something random. All right, that's functioning. And now let's go ahead and take a look at the shortwave broadcast. So we will go to shortwave broadcast schedule, and let's annotate the main SP. And as you can see here, it's showing the station information in the main SP.
So there you have it, an example of some of the packages from Black Cat Systems. And thank you to Mike for showing that. I wish he'd muted it when he was getting those slow scan TV pictures coming down. But moving on, another community developed plugin is for the Contour Shuttle. And the plugin was developed by a gentleman by the name of Eddie McDonald. We're indebted to him for doing that for us. And it works with both the Contour Shuttle Express, which is what you see. That's my Contour Shuttle in the lower right, and also with the Pro version. So here's a little demo of how that works in practice. Next, we click on the Plugins button to open up the plugin window, select Contour Shuttle, and load plugin. Once the window is opened, we can click on the Settings button, and then we can use that to work on the button assignments. We have a choice. We can either use the predefined settings, or we can set them up to suit our own purposes. For example, here, button 1 is set to define the mute. And as you see, when I press the button, the mute is turned on and off. By default, button 3 toggles the squelch on and off. And you can see as I press button 3, the squelch indicator turns on and off. Now what's interesting is that by default also, the outer ring can be used to set the squelch level. As you see here, as I turn the outer dial, the threshold for the squelch level indicated by the horizontal line in the spectrum window moves up and down accordingly. Cool stuff. And as you might expect, the inner jog shuttle dial has been set up to adjust the VFO frequency. And as you see, as I turn the dial, the frequency will move up and down. If you don't like the predefined assignments, you can change them to suit your workflow. For example, I like to use the buttons to switch between the different modes, AM, FM, upper sideband, lower sideband, etc. So all you have to do is to select the button of interest, scroll down the list of actions and find the ones you want. As an example, what I've done here is assign button 2 for AM mode and button 3 to FM wide stereo. And now you can see as I press on buttons 2 and 3 on the dial, the mode changes up in the RX control window. Okay, so that's the Contour Shuttle plugin, and you know, this is just the beginning of what we expect to be coming out in the future as more and more users develop their own plugins. We're talking to almost all the standard software package, third-party software authors, and encouraging them to write plugins to work with SDRUno. So the whole purpose of today's talk was to show you that really the ultimate capabilities of your SDR ecosystem depend on the software. So it's very important to choose the best software for the job. The plugin feature I really wanted to highlight, that's new since my last talk at Hamcation, and I do encourage you to visit our website to learn more about it. There's a plugins page, which you can see on the screen, and there are also videos in our video catalog that go into much more depth about the various plugins. I'm sure Mike was cringing because his demos, I really cut them down to fit in the time. And we're getting right towards the end, which is pretty cool. So I just want to put up some information resources here. I don't click on the plugins. Oh, excuse me. I don't know if I'll have much time to do many more live Q&A with you, but go to SDRplay.com, visit our apps catalog, go to the user forums. There are several of them out there. Any questions that we weren't able to answer today during the talk, you can send to supportusa@sdrplay.com. And I should also mention our partner, Ham Radio Outlet, is running specials today. I believe it's $10 off the RSP-1A and $20 off the RSP-DX and RSP Duo, which is really cool. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and come back and see if there's anything here that I should have. Does SDRUno work with SDR dongles? Yes, as a matter of fact, it does. There's a so-called EXTIO version, which offers somewhat limited capabilities up to sample rates of about 2 megahertz. But you really want to get an RSP to get the most out of your system here. And it's free. The only thing I've shown you today that costs you any money whatsoever would be the Black Cat Systems packages, the SSTV, the WeatherFax, and the DX Toolbox. Everything else is absolutely free. So does Fran require a prior loaded, I lost the question, a prior loaded database? Yeah, you can download different databases. And there's a couple of things you can do. You can generate your own database using the memory panel in SDRUno, or you can go off to EIBI or SWSCHEDS and download from there. And you'll see many of those options when you click on the file menu in SDRUno, because those databases are constantly being updated. So, you know, I think we've come a long way with SDRUno. I think we have a long way to go. I'm really looking forward to the Mac version, as Sherrod Monday mentioned here in the comments. Yeah, Cubic is rudimentary, but it does work. And I'm quite happy to sometimes just plug in my RSP to my MacBook when I'm traveling and just listen to what's going on there. Do you have a video on how to use Spectrum Analyzer? I don't know if we've done one of those or not. I'd have to go check.
The RSGB has one. The Radio Society of Great Britain did something about noise, finding noise, and they used the Spectrum Analyzer software, and they went into detail. If I can find that link, I don't know how I'm going to get it to you, but I will take a look. If the person that asked that question, if they're comfortable leaving their email address in the chat, please do that, and I'll get back to you with that video. But there is one specific using the Spectrum Analyzer software.
Hey, I see Eric's joined us, Eric Cottrell, who wrote the Fran plugin. Hey, Eric, great to see you. And shame on you for writing software that exposed a memory leak in our plugin system. We've got a new version coming along that will take care of that problem. I don't know if Eddie's with us today or not, but also a big thank you to Eddie for writing the Contour Shuttle plugin. Okay, I'm going to answer this. We've answered it before, but it doesn't hurt to cover it ad nauseam. How do you protect the SDR from transmit? You have to protect it when you're transmitting. And the best way to do that is to get a TR switch. The folks at MFJ developed the MFJ 1708B-SDR specifically for this application. And it means you get automatic protection for your RSP during transmit. Now, some rigs already have a protected output, usually labeled RX out or RX antenna out. If you have a Kenwood TS590SG, it has an output labeled DRV, which are protected by internal TR circuitry in the rig itself. So one way or another, you have to ensure that you're protected, because if you transmit into the front end of your RSP, as I like to tell people, what happens is it liberates the smoke, and smoke is what makes the RSP work. And once the smoke comes out, it doesn't work anymore. New messages. They say we should include popcorn, Mike, because your videos are so long and boring.
Really? Oh, I'm sorry about that, guys. I didn't know. Long, yes, but I hopefully they're not that boring.
Yeah. Mike, I'm not even looking at the Q&A. Have you got a good handle going on that?
Yeah, 40 answered, 11 open. I'm doing the best that I can.
Okay, no, that's fine. And again, I want to stress, please go to SDRplay.com. And use the navigation at the top of the page. We have a wonderful help system there. I say wonderful, although it can be daunting. What we try to do is we've done so many videos. Mike did a lot of videos. I've done a few videos. John, back in the UK, has done a few videos. And if you go into the help system, it's kind of annoying in a way because you have to go through so many steps, but it asks you what software you're using, what product you have, and then what sort of issues you're having, whether it's a software problem or a hardware problem. And then it will try and serve up to you the relevant videos that talk you through the process of setting it up for that particular application. Or you can just go straight to the video catalog and put in search terms. So pan adapter is a very popular one. Put pan adapter in the search box and you'll get a whole bunch of application notes and videos telling you how to set up a pan adapter. If you want to know about multi-PSK, put that in the search box and so on. There's a ton of resource there available to you. If you're not able to resolve it yourself, then what you can do is you can open up a support ticket through the help system, and that will get answered by one of the members of the SDRplay support team, typically Mike or even me. The Hamcation guys haven't kicked me off yet, which is good. So,
I just want to say real quick, we will be ending the webinar at 1:54, so you have time for like one question, I think.
Okay, perfect. Well, what I really want to do is I want to thank everybody for showing up today. I apologize for some of the little technical difficulties I had working it. Hopefully you could hear it okay. And I think maybe some of the video clips, the audio was down a little bit. We'll get better. And I'd like to thank the folks at Hamcation for putting this on for us. I really wish we were down in Florida, but I guess this is the second best thing. And please send some Florida sunshine up to Texas because we're freezing up here. But thanks, everybody. 73.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending this webinar. It will be available on our YouTube channel. You can find all the information about this session and the stream, the recording of the stream later on www.hamcation.com. So thank you so much for attending and have a great day.